Thanks for tuning in to the World XP podcast. If you're enjoying the content, please drop us up, drop a like, and let us know your thoughts below in the comments. Also, please consider supporting our podcast via the link below. It really helps us out.
Jared, welcome to the World XP podcast. How are you, man?
Doing very well. Happy to be here. Happy to have a good conversation and catch up.
Glad to have you. So, for those who don't know who you are, can you do a quick intro for us, who you are and what you do? And then, as everyone who's been listening for a little while knows, we got the question from the last guest, and then we'll hop right into the conversation. But welcome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm Jared. I grew up in this area, played Vienna, Braddock Road growing up, so very much a local and in the DMV soccer scene. And then originally committed to Haverford, a smaller D3 college in Philadelphia. Ended up decommitting and then going to VCU in Richmond and playing, 4.5 years there, redshirted my freshman year and had a great time. And ever since that, came back, been playing for Arlington UPSL team, where I get to meet all these wonderful people and have great experiences like this. And yeah, I studied science in school, and so I'm trying to pursue a career in medicine and go from there.
Well, he's the last guest, Dr. Chris Nerschel. He's an immunologist. He works for a biotech firm up in Boston.
Wow.
His question for you is if you could pick a person living or dead, doesn't matter. There's three options. One's for dinner, one is a week vacation, and one is to work 9 to 5 with for a year.
Oh, 9 to 5, especially an immunologist asking that question. 9 to 5 for a year. Absolutely. I think.
So you get to pick one for each category.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I want to choose Rosalind Franklin for 9 to 5, but then I don't want to get radiation poisoning. Okay, so vacation with. Oh wow, these are tough ones. So okay, so vacation with 9 to 5, and then
Dinner.
dinner. Dead or alive? Oh, okay. You know what? I'll go with Rosalind Franklin, 9 to 5. Hopefully a year isn't too much to give me radiation poisoning. It depends on when. That would be riveting to discover basically the shape and configuration of DNA before it was kind of taken from Watson and Crick. But she was a really important woman in that discovery in science. So I think 9 to 5 working, that would be incredible. I think a week vacation. I think a dinner I would do with Winston Churchill. Just pick his brain, very interesting person. It seems like he definitely drinks a lot, so that'd be interesting to see all those aspects over a dinner. And then a week vacation. You know what? A week vacation, I go with Mr. Beast, the YouTuber.
That's a great
That
answer.
man has some of the craziest ideas I've ever seen, and he's been able to capture and the attention of just everyone in the world and so many kids of this generation. And seems like he has a great time, either blowing up things or going on crazy trips to islands. So that would probably be my week vacation.
Dude, those are great. Those are great answers. The Mr. Beast one, I think that's a good one. Yeah, he's have you seen him on podcasts at all? Like when people ask him about his process
It,
and how he
it
does what he does?
I haven't watched so much of it, but it's like he's like telling about him and his friends. It's like we just lived in a room for a year, 2 years, and just studied YouTube, foot nails, like all the like very technical aspects to what is a good video. And it is incredible how much groundwork they did before even really starting and really following through on that whole process.
Yeah, especially the amount of money that he goes like he does like if you ask him like, "Hey, how much money did you spend on this video?" He's like, "Oh, I don't even know, like 10 million." And you're like, "What?"
Just
Like
drop it. And then they don't really keep that amount from it. It's just like all that money goes kind of back into the next video. And so that they can keep doing crazier and crazier videos with how popular it is, it seems.
yeah, his version of Squid Games I think has more views than the real show. Um,
That's insane. Yeah,
which is
I
which is
watched it.
nuts.
I watched both, and loved both. And but the way he does it, where it's like it's real people, so it is it is a little different where even if it could be in aspects scripted, um, it is incredible. It feels like more genuine. And like if you can imagine yourself there, and I think that's what makes a lot of it special.
Yeah. So I want to hop into, you mentioned that you went to a sports psychologist for a little while. Um, what is that like, or what was the why was it suggested to you? Why did you pull the trigger and end up doing it? Like, what was that whole process like? And we can let's dive into that a little bit because I think we'll spend a lot of today just talking about the mental side of the game. I think it gets definitely gets talked about, but there's some aspects that I think don't, and it's not necessarily in terms of um your own prep, but like the environment that is fostered around you, and then how you as an individual deal with that and that sort of relationship. But I want to start with the sports psychologist thing because I've never had one on the show um, as well. So let's start there, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think for me, it kind of stemmed from when I was younger, and I still have dyslexia. So reading and writing was a very difficult process, and so that kind of led me. I always kind of resonated with math and science more, and I think that frustration I had towards like academically led to my perfectionism as a person. And although you develop traits that you work hard and try to make everything perfect, I think you can get stalled very easily if you don't see how to finish a project or accomplish something that may be difficult, or when faced with great stress or anxiety, especially given a soccer game, you're playing a championship final and like you are so nervous to play and perform well that that causes you to not do well.
Hmm.
And so I think being younger and being a perfectionist and not having the necessary like coping strategies to deal with that, I struggled to perform in different situations. Although I was still a good player, I think my game could have been elevated a lot just from the emotional and stress reduction aspect of just enjoying it. And like you're doing this for fun in the end, and it will be very serious, but you at the very basis of it, you're doing it for enjoyment. Um, and so I was dealing with a lot of that stuff like younger, and just confidence being low because right with perfectionism, if everything's not perfect, you make one mistake, well now the rest of your game you're thinking about that mistake, right? And that you
Hmm.
can't
Yeah.
be having that. Especially as a player, as soon as you make a mistake, it's quite literally the next play. Like it's already changed, and you need to react immediately on what just happened, whether it was you or a teammate. So a kind of lack of confidence when I was younger led me to you know, my mom is a very important person in my life, and I think we had I was direct with her and honest, and we talked about it. And I think she found a sports psychologist in the area, who was fantastic, and I saw him for a couple years, um, and basically shifting your perspective from outcome based results to process based, while also working on emotional control. And basically, the like he came up with these 5 pillars that would kind of help me feel more in control and almost confident that I have done a lot and I've been doing well with this stuff. So the pillars would be physical, mental, lifestyle, tactical, and then technical.
Hmm.
And that would refer directly, and this is specifically soccer, right? You're talking about the technical aspects of the game, tactical aspects of the game, physicality, whether that could be physical strength or conditioning. Mental obviously would be how focused was I? How did I go about the warm up? Was I engaging with other players? And then lifestyle was like nutrition, sleep. Have I been seeing friends? Have I been getting relaxation? Have I been working too much? And basically, those 5 pillars break it down where you can get very specific in what aspects of the game went well and didn't go well. And you'll find if you're a player, you do a lot more good than you do bad, just at the highest level, right? That one bad can cost you the game in different
Hmm.
ways. So I think reflecting on that and being like, wait, I actually did play very well this game. I just need to adjust these sort of things. And so like talking to him for a couple years, working on that emotional control, breathing techniques, what to focus on, has really helped me. Absolutely. And even doing something I still do today, not as often as like, but I definitely will do is game reviews. So basically you break down each pillar and technically what did I do well today? And you would have a well section, a adjustment section. So if I've been taking a touch with my left foot, but it wasn't as clean, it still functionally works, but it wasn't as clean as I'd like to make that next play that I wanted. That could be an adjustment. Another big part of it is improvement. So like, what did I improve upon since the last game? What have I been working towards? And that kind of gives you something to be focused on and like keep getting better in that aspect. And then finally, the last section would be like replace. What did I do that, like playing a certain pass that just wouldn't tactically work in a certain scenario? And so you kind of break it down like that, and you're like, okay, I did a lot of good things. These things I can kind of work on, and with especially with film, you can go through and I think that's really how you want to watch film and go through it, where it's like, okay, I did a lot of good. This can help build my confidence, and I can go from there. Um, yeah, and the emotional aspect, emotional control, breathing. What am I focused on? Am I focused on, oh my gosh, we need to win this game the whole time, and then you're going to be stressed and not focused on the actual game when what's occurring? Rather, you will be, it should rather inform you how you should operate. Like if it's, it's the 88th minute and you're up 1-0, okay, I'm clearing this ball rather than trying to build out from the back as soon as
Mhm.
we want it back as they're attacking. So have the outcome and time inform your decisions, but don't let it control it. And focusing on the process of if I take a good touch and play a good pass to the next player, we will build momentum and we will eventually break them down. And kind of viewing the game like that and steps at a time, it becomes much simpler. I think in
Mm.
decision making, your decisions become much simpler and more obvious. I get the ball from one side, we were just over there, let's switch it. Rather than me like, okay, how can we how can I make the greatest play right now and win the game? That will come naturally as I'm looking to go forward and doing those things, but that's part of the process. And I think that helps with that like emotional control aspect of focusing on what I control versus what I cannot control. And kind of doing that is huge. And yeah, that's a big part of it. And that's in my mind the gist of my experience with sports psychology and kind of just unwinding maybe certain mental habits you've been going through and about games to perform to the point you've been at where now you want to move beyond that and perform even better.
How did you see the adjustment when what was it like high school time frame that you
Yeah,
went? So how was the adjustment for you? Was there any nerves of like if I go to a sports psychologist then like I'm a bitch or whatever, like anything of that nature, like were you already of the mindset of like, no, I need help with these things, so I need somebody to help me? Like, was there an adjustment for you for that? Did you have to worry about peers being, I don't know, well, high schoolers?
stigmatized. No, no, absolutely. No, I definitely agree. And that's a huge thing. It's like because it's both, right? I think with men's mental health a lot as well, not even sports psychology or sports in general, therapy. I think both are so stigmatized, and it's like, well, and it's okay to like it's a sign, really is a sign of strength that you are looking to ask for help from others, that you recognize and know yourself well enough and you're confident in who you are, that you are willing to ask for help and know that it will improve you in the long run. Because if I just stay the way I am, I'm just going to suffer for longer. Well, that doesn't make sense if it's just for a stigma or someone else's opinion. What matters most is who I am and what I'm doing to take care of myself. So at the end of the day, because it's you, like it's your life. Um, so I think there's a huge stigma around it. I think it was both, right? It was I need this as well as I don't want to be stigmatized. So you keep it quiet for a little bit as you're kind of going through it and as you build that confidence both on the field, I think that does translate absolutely to off the field and you can apply these processes to work or academics or really any aspect of your life. And it builds your confidence that you're like it's okay that I did this. I don't really care what people have to say about it, and hopefully your friends would support you in that, and not give you crap about it, because then they're not your friends if they're giving you in different ways. There's ways you can joke, but genuinely they should want the best for you the way you want the best for yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
So first session, what's it like? You go in and what are your expectations? Right? You walk in the door, you're in some psychologist's office. You've seen the crime TV shows where they sit down and you're like, this guy's a psychopath and we need to, like, you walk in the door, what's the expectation? And then how did it go? Was it what you expected, or did you not know what to expect? Or were you like, this is going to help? I feel oftentimes, um, maybe not in your situation, but oftentimes you're convinced that by somebody that cares about you, like, oh, you need to go talk to this person or try this thing. And you're kind of like, yeah, whatever. In the first session, you're like, this was useless, a complete waste of time.
yeah,
Like, like I could just go on YouTube and learn that I need to sleep more. Um,
yeah.
what was it like for you the first session?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you definitely have to buy in. For my first session, I mean, it's like a young adolescent male. You're just you're like, I don't want to talk about my feelings. I don't want to talk about what I'm dealing with. You just want to put in work and lift. And at that point, I wasn't really lifting because I was very young. But it's like I just want to play. I just want to, work through it in whatever capacity I know how. When that's not the smartest way to go about it. And so for the first few sessions, you're talking to a stranger, so you're really trying to build rapport, get to know them, get to know each other. And like sometimes it's not a good match. And that's why there's so many different therapists or sports psychologists, is you just really need to find someone that resonates with you and understands you sometimes. But no, I just you have to keep going and until you really buy in. And I think that's when you really see the results. Because it's not going to be overnight. Like someone saying something profound to you is people can have epiphanies, but I don't think that really translates. You need to hear that a few times. And once you put that like defensive barrier down where you can really accept the idea and engage with it, I think that's when you see that change happen. So the first few sessions, like I have no idea what to expect. You go through like even I got like a binder and like a folder that I'd write in review and like kind of go, and it's active reflection. It's absolutely what you needed to learn those pillars and like the emotional control stuff, and that aspect of like journaling and writing out your emotions is important for learning on how to start thinking about your emotions. And so yeah, so like the first few sessions were definitely slow, but once I started opening up more, buying in and building that rapport and connecting with the person, then you start to see results and you start implementing those things in the field, and you're like, okay, that worked for me and maybe this didn't work. And as you keep building, it creates a huge change, and it's absolutely changed my trajectory as a player and as a person. It has done so much for me, without question, without question.
The next play thing that people always talk about in soccer. Funny anecdote. I was playing a volleyball tournament a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
and I had a stretch in one of the games where I missed a couple, and because there was a second in between points, that was worse for me than soccer, where the game doesn't stop. And I found that interesting because soccer, like, my wife was like, "Get it out of your head. It's next point," and I was like, well, yeah, but there's a
I have
whole
to
10
sit in it.
seconds between. I'm just sitting here waiting for somebody to get the ball and like stewing that I just missed a shot there was no block and all I had to do was hit the corner. And anyways, so I find that interesting. Like it's the environment that you're in. The pace of the game can have a like you don't have time to process it at that time. At least for me in soccer, I very rarely have time to process like if I lost the ball as a defender, I have to go win it back immediately. So like there's
Yeah,
not really that much time. Like you're
yeah.
already on to the next thing. So did what was it like for you prior to sports prior to going in to these sessions like in terms of was that a struggle for you? Like would you miss what's an example of one of the things one of
Absolutely.
the catalysts that was like okay, I need to go talk to somebody.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So basically, facing the games, right? I'm a perfectionist at this point. Still kind of am, but I have better mechanisms to deal with that aspect. But yeah, you're going into games of like, I need to be perfect. And it's like, when do you see players with 100% passing, 100% passing, won every single tackle, won every header, and scored a goal? And you're, it's like, the person that is the best, if that, the best player in the world. You know what I mean? And so how can I have that expectation for myself who is just starting to learn the game and just playing? And you can't, because every time you move up a level, there's going to be an adjustment period where you have to make mistakes to learn. You have to fail to learn. In my mind, you have to have those repeated failures in some aspect to have those deep-seated experiences to know for next time. And so I'm entering the games thinking I have to be perfect, and then I will miss a pass, give it to the other team, and now that's in my head. And so now the next play, I'm nervous of making the correct pass with the proper weight, on the right foot, right? And so when you're so nervous about those plays, well, it's not going to happen as fluidly as soccer is, right? When you're flowing and having fun, that's when you're playing those clean passes. You're getting 1-2s, you're winning tackles, because it's like your flow state. You enter that flow state, versus when you're in your own head, you stop communicating now, right? Because you're so focused on what you did wrong, it takes your focus away from everything else. And so kind of experiencing that, which then leads to a lack of confidence, right? Because now coach is like, why are you messing up? And then you get yanked. You play the first 15 minutes of a game and then you mess up, you miss a header, and coach is like, you're gonna sit right on the bench. And for a kid, mentally, that's devastating. It's like, directly, I made a mistake and this led to this consequence. When in reality, like, coach maybe wants to win or needs to have a prepared team on the field. And so I think experiencing moments of that, definitely led me to be like, okay, this would definitely be helpful. Um, and yeah, and dealing with just outcomes that weren't, in my control, like entering ODP, tried out for the first time, didn't make it. That is not an outcome at that point I can control. I was as good a player as I was, right, in that position at that moment in time, and I wasn't good enough. And so then you face that detail and you move on and you train and you get better, rather than sitting in that despair of like not being picked, right? And then you try out again, or you keep trying to move up levels doing that same thing and you slowly get better. But not without that growth mindset. And this was big in college as well for our team, because my last year, it was not necessarily a rebuild, but we had lost a lot of our starters from the previous year. And so it's like, how are we going to take a lot of younger players and really make sure that we grow throughout the season? And it's like, don't worry about the immediate result. How did we play? How will we grow into the season? Because in the ending, especially in college soccer, it's like it's playoff time. Like, you could have won all your games before, but if you're not performing in playoffs, nothing really matters. And you do have to win a lot of those games at the end of the year to get a bid still. And so for us, it was like, just get ready for the conference tournament, be ready for that. And we performed a lot better at the end of the season. I think a mix of playing slightly weaker teams because our schedule is strong. But mainly from the fact that we just kept growing, just kept believing, and try to get better every single day and squeeze as much as we could out of the team in terms of quality and effort. And so I think that growth versus fixed mindset is something that's definitely uh big to have developed through sports psychology. And like, I didn't have that. I'd have had a very fixed mindset of, I wasn't good enough, right? Like, I didn't get picked. I'm not good enough. And it's like, when you say it like that, well, you're not going to put in the work next week to try and get better and perform better. So, I think facing all those things, and then my mom having the knowledge of playing her sport at a higher level, knew that that was an option, fortunately. Um, and yeah, so
When you talk about the emotional regulation side, um, obviously there's the most visible one on the field is like somebody who gets very angry very quickly and they're like flying into tackles and all this other stuff. I think we know one or two of those. Um, did you have was that an issue for you, or were you taking it out on yourself like internally?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely taking out more of myself. I was very hard on myself more so than anyone else. And so rather than, going into it, I was never a very violent person. So like going in that groundbreaking tackle where I could injure someone else was never an ideal that really resonated with me as an option. And taking that out on someone else. So it was always more so I just got in my head when I would make a mistake or something like that. And I think that trait has allowed me to kind of avoid those sort of scenarios. I mean, there's plenty of times you've made frustration fouls, right? You give the ball away and then you kind of dive into a tackle trying to win it back immediately. That I'm absolutely a culprit of doing, as I'm sure everyone has. Um, but yeah, I absolutely think that's part of it, and like recognizing what is the moving on from the next play would be forgetting that you gave the ball away and more so just we need a counter press. I need to put pressure. What is the best way to do that with the player in front of me right now? Um, and absolutely the same with talking to a ref. You give away a foul, you not moving on from the plays. Now you're talking back to the ref. Maybe you're cursing at him, all these things, and then you just get like dumb yellow cards and things like that really frustrate me because at least you're putting in a tackle in some capacity you're trying to win the ball, I'd hope, rather than like actually just hitting someone because then you're just getting a red and coming off. But those frustration yellows that you're just arguing with the ref are just baseless. Like I let the coach do that because he won't be as um he won't face as great repercussions as you playing with the yellow because now you have to play more cautiously, or you don't play more cautiously and you get a red card and now you're costing the team a lot more than just that one foul. And so I think having the emotional maturity to recognize you gave away the foul, just give a thumbs up to the ref or a quick comment where you're just like, I don't think it was, but then you need to move on to the next play because right, if it's not a yellow, they can immediately start playing again. So you need to start evaluating. So those kind of things always frustrate you now, but before that was just a normal expectation for me, maybe a frustration foul, maybe just giving away the next ball that I was still in my head about the previous play. Um, but that emotional regulation of I think focusing on the process, you almost can take away an emotional aspect to it, that makes it easier to perform.
Hmm.
And I think you can show emotion in different moments where you score a goal and you have a break, you should show emotion. You win a big tackle at the end of the game, the ball's out of play for a little bit, organizing and showing some of that, I think can build team confidence and confidence for yourself and kind of implement your will on the other team where now they're getting afraid and scared that you're really amped. Um, but I think for the most part it needs to be very much in control. I think you need to have control of your emotions and yourself when you're performing on the field.
Yeah, if you don't have control of your own emotions, then you can be controlled and manipulated by somebody else who's smart and knows how to, right? We see this all the time. Somebody will walk by you during a break in play and give a little kick on the ankle that
Mhm.
doesn't hurt at all, and somebody will turn around and swing or whatever, and then all of a sudden that person gets sent off, and as all those things happen all the time.
Well,
The
Tim,
referee,
yeah,
huh?
with Wea in the Copa America.
Yeah, exactly the same. Um, the referee, the referee thing is very similar. Like when I was playing arena, um, we had basically the same pool of refs like for the first two or three seasons or however long it was. Um, and if you had a good relationship with them, then I don't know, well, then you could talk to them and before or after a game be like, hey man, I don't think like this was a foul or whatever. Or by the same token, like they understand that if you have generally good relationship, like the one time you get angry because of whatever, they're not going to give you a card for whatever because they know the person that you are and they know that.
Yeah.
So it's like built in a level of credibility. Like I don't think, I don't know, I can't remember a yellow that I've got for dissent because most of the refs know that I'm not gonna like blow a top if a call doesn't go my way.
Yeah.
And then by the same token, they also know some like I had one. I don't recommend this, so I'm not condoning what I'm about to say. But there was one time, um, I was very upset with a ref for missing like a call on me. There was like a cleat mark down the side of my
Yeah.
leg, and I was like very unhappy with the situation, rightfully so. And the ref took a look and then went back to go talk to the AR because it's like they know that I wouldn't get that angry if something didn't
Mhm.
happen. And so I'm not condoning using that as like a tool. But by the same token, if you have that emotional kind of stability throughout the game, then it can you have like one or two built in the bank where like okay, then it's okay, and you're not going to face the same repercussions as if you're doing it every week. Um, so that's a something that I found interesting over the last couple of years. I had another question, I forgot what it was. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, but again, that's part of the game, and that's part of being a specific character, right? Like if they know you to be diving or whining or complaining, the other team knows that, right? And so now they're going to keep chipping at you and barking, to kind of get you frustrated. And then you're either going to do frustration fouls or you're going to dive and beg for calls and then whine that the ref already knows about, right? Like not necessarily maybe not at this level, but definitely at the higher level, refs are watching countless, especially for big games. They're watching countless games and film or have ref these players all before. And so there's certain expectations the ref has along that line. So similar to what you're saying, where if you're of a certain standard and character, well, if it's a tactical foul, that's standard yellow, right? But if it's just a normal foul that might miss the mark, and a more aggressive player is probably getting a yellow off the bat versus a more reserved player that the ref knows this will not really happen again, and they don't need to caution you. They don't need to do that sort of thing. And I think building that character is very important. I think Philip Blom never got a red card in like his
Yeah.
career, and I think that just at a very high level then earns the respect of refs in a different way where they have an expectation for you, um that they don't need to be as aggressive in defending another player. And I think that is an important, even with local soccer, we have the same refs a lot of the time. So I think building that character for yourself is very important, and kind of building off that. And I think the more time you kind of spend whining at the ref as well is time taken away from the game, and can be
And
wasted.
energy taken away from yourself as well and your own teammates.
Yeah.
You talked about the like reflection and emotional reflection earlier. How is that translated to the rest of your life in terms of relationships, jobs, interviews, uh, even like family situations, things like that? Have you been able to take those lessons that you learned for reflecting on, hey, I felt this way about this certain situation. Let's break it down and understand why this happened. And have you been able to take those uh, skills and lessons into other aspects of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think everyone has to. I think journaling and certainly reflection, like people, you need to have reflection in order to improve. Um, because whether that reflection is I made a mistake, what am I going to do next time? Or it's you physically writing something down and spending time with it later on. Um, the lesson isn't learned unless you reflect on it. Like unless you ask the question like what went wrong or what could be adjusted here. And so I think that's super important to begin with. And then because you have this mindset translates to all these other problems in your life where it's academically, I didn't do as well on that test. What went wrong? I didn't get a homework on time. I didn't, I should have talked to the professor earlier. I shouldn't send an email. With family, why? And it can always be complicated, but why did they react a certain way? Why do they feel like I wasn't maybe present or really listening to them in certain cases? And I think having that reflection allows you to take a step back of your emotional reaction where you're like, what do you mean? And being defensive. And I think it gives you a more balanced perspective and view, where you can be more empathetic because or sympathetic because you can kind of view things from a more neutral ground, but also someone else's perspective, to improve upon situations. And yeah, for me, it's like academically, it becomes very formulaic of like how I should be talking to professors, when I should be talking to them, working with them to get good grades and tests, and surprised asking the professor what's the best way to kind of study or perform in their class. somehow translates to great results because they've taught hundreds and thousands of kids in their course, right? The same way for like parents or friends. How would you like me to support you or talk to you? They're gonna hope, and they're not gonna, not everyone knows themselves so well, but at least in their perspective, they know how they like to be supported or talked to. Just asking that person goes a long way. Absolutely no question. So, yeah.
Do you find that translates to leadership as well? Um, I didn't know the structure of Arlington walking into the team what in January or February, whenever it was. Um, but immediately it's like, okay, this guy, you is a captain for sure, or if not a captain, like doesn't want to be, but is still like it was very obvious first practice. Um, but you weren't doing any yelling or shouting or whatever or any of the other things. And I 2 episodes ago, I had a guy on who's he's a human resources consultant, so he does a lot of leadership training and other things. He was like head of
Yeah.
HR for Nickelodeon's animation studios for a couple of
Wow.
years and all this stuff. And so he talks about leadership all the time. And that's something that's very interesting to me as a because you can go through all the leadership classes you want, and somebody can say all the right things that the leadership book tells them to say, but that doesn't mean that you will listen to them or think that they're a good leader. I've met people that the way they talk sounds like it's from a leadership textbook, and I'm like, yeah, but
Not genuine.
I
You
don't
don't,
care what you
you
say.
don't,
Yeah, but so then the question is like, what makes somebody like, what if that really is him being genuine and I just had a misread, you know? So like, but there's something inherent about that. What do you think that is going like a step further than saying, oh, that person's authentic or genuine? Because it's if you don't really know that person, like, who are you to say that that's their authentic? Like, you can get a vibe, but you don't really know.
yeah,
So like
absolutely.
if you were to go a step further than that, like what would you say contributes to good leadership qualities in somebody else? Like if you were to walk it, if the roles were flipped and you walked into the team, like what would be something that you could point out tangibly that's like that person is a good leader because of blank, blank, and blank.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I experienced the same thing you did. I started playing with Arlington last year at the very end of the spring season. And then played in the fall and then now playing in the spring. So I came through kind of the same scenario. You're walking to a random team, I might know a couple guys, but you're really getting to know people. And I think exactly from your anecdote as well, you're describing, well, maybe I don't even know the guy. I think a quality of a leader that is, and it depends in different scenarios, right? Different careers, what a leader can be. But I think a leader, at least specifically for soccer, is someone who really gets to know everyone. Um, in some capacity, and I think that's why they may be respected or followed, right? Because if you're a very good friend of mine, you're going to be more willing to listen to what I have to say rather than combative. If we're playing on the same team and we don't know each other, nor do we connect as people, and we don't have to like all the same things or anything like that, but really like knowing someone and like going out for like lunch or just like having a conversation with them before practice, like what'd you do today? What do you do for work? Like what's your family like? Do you have any brothers or sisters? Just like those little team building questions, I think are very important and make that person feel welcomed. And therefore, they're going to be more willing to listen to what you have to say because you listen to them. Like, if I'm asking someone about their day and I listen to them speak about their day and I want to get to know them about what their family's like and how their childhood was, well, they're going to be more willing to listen to me when I have something to say on the field or in that different perspective. At VCU, I became a leader, just every day, just putting in work, being a role model in that sense, but also just trying to connect with as many of my teammates and caring about them. These are I spend time with you guys every single day. Why wouldn't I be your guys' friends? Like why would I keep such a barrier between both? And I think that improves connection and allows for a leader to be a good leader so that you really know everyone so that they will listen to you when you have something to say the same way that they would know you would listen for their story, but also if they had anything to say to you and that they feel comfortable going up to you and speaking. And so I think with like your HR stuff and like, or maybe just someone else where they're saying the right things, but I don't believe them. It's like, well, sometimes you need to have lunch with that person. It's like, well, who are you? Like, why should I buy in a little bit? Why should I buy into who you are and what you're saying? And once you get to know them, it's like, wow, you've actually, as everyone has, a unique story, unique life, and real experiences. And from hearing that, I feel closer to you and more willing to listen and hear you out. I think is big, and I think that's what, at least specifically at Arlington as well. It was when I came in with different captains. They knew every guy. And then that might translate differently on the field where some guys are yelling more, or they're more of a quiet leader or role model that does the right things. Because I think people express leadership differently. I don't think leaders are born. I think they are created, and from their environment and their own reflection and experiences, but also from the people around them, right? Because leaders aren't leaders because they decided they were going to be a leader. They're leaders because others decided that they should be a leader, that more people bought in. And I think that comes from human connection and yeah, just like the depth of knowledge you have about someone else. I think creates a leader. Um, Hopefully in corporate world, it can definitely be different. Where you're working up a ladder and like it's all kind of random people of all different ages and backgrounds, and it is hard to connect sometimes. But at least on a soccer team where you are similar, because you'll play the same sport or in some capacity had similar experiences growing up. Um,
Yeah. I think coaches look for those a lot as well. So going off that, if you were to give advice to younger players or your younger self, kind of in the early high school stages, about developing that side of their game, the mental side of their game, in preparation for college, where that game, if we're being completely honest, is not like obviously it's soccer, but relative to like other aspects of soccer, it's not quite the same as it's played slightly differently. There's unlimited subs, so you can press all the
yeah,
time and like all these different things, right?
yeah,
Um, so how would you recommend a younger player be building themselves mentally and developing as a leader, kind of as to be the most attractive player that they could be to a coach, but from that side of the game? Like what sorts of things would you recommend? What sorts of advice would you give to that sort of person, or even like yourself when you were that age?
yeah. Yeah, for this one, I think is carry yourself the same way off the field that you would on the field. And in that sense, for me at least, was be consistent and try and do as many right things as you can. Off the field. I think who I am off the field translates to who I am on the field. Academically, trying to make sure my things are taken care of, that I'm eating right, I'm sleeping right, I'm exercising, taking care of my body. And I think that translates to me on the field where it's like I'm trying to communicate, manage the small details of the game. On the ball, I'm trying to be clean and make quick decisions. I think the biggest thing that comes from that is that consistency. And at the highest level, that's what it is, right? Every game, so many players that didn't make it had higher ceilings than other players who are playing pro now. But I think on average, on any given day, a pro will uphold a specific standard above the line way more times than not. And that's what makes them a pro. And really anything that could soccer, career, corporate life, job. It's the consistency to show up every day and perform a certain action and be reliable. And so I think the biggest thing is be reliable, being respectful with coaches, being respectful with refs on the field, because or in other players, if you're fighting, arguing with the ref all the time, well, coach is going to see that. And it's like that can cause problems for me, because then if you're doing this with them, will you be more competitive to what I'm saying to you? Will you be able to listen to me? Are you coachable? Are all very important things. So I think, you know, being consistent is the best way, and being consistent in your actions is the best way to build yourself mentally, because then you will have the confidence to implement plans and carry yourself in the right way that you want to.
Makes sense. I agree. Last sort of subject, I think. I've had a few people come on the call to talk about the college recruiting process.
Hmm.
Um, mine was very not normal. I tried to walk down to Mary Washington.
Yep.
Wasn't really had talked to a few schools, but like wasn't really involved in like the recruiting process that much. So, talk about your experience with the recruiting process. Again, advice for younger players. Some of the players that I train listen to these occasionally. So, like, if you had advice, or well, I guess at a very high level, we can leave it at that. But what sorts of things would you do again? What sorts of things would you not do if you had a second go around? What would you change? Um, like starting from like freshman year of high school? Like what are the steps that you would be taking?
I would absolutely go to less ID camps. I think unless a coach specifically is requesting you there, it depends. I think it's a very tricky process. It's a very expensive one to go through ID camps. I think if you're already talking to a coach and they've seen you play and they might show some interest, going to those specific ID camps can be very beneficial because then they can see you more. They'll build that personal rapport like I was talking about, where they get to know you as a person. They're like, oh wow, this is actually a really great kid and he can play. This is someone I want on my team. But I think going to some of the general ones can be money grabs in moments, and things change now, right? The environment now with all the video and everything is a little different. But at least back then, going to those ID camps, I just found myself way more exhausted. Um, and then just overwhelmed. I wasn't sleeping well because then you train all week, you play games, and then you go to an ID camp and you're like, I can't walk Monday. I have practice that night. And so it's like, how do I go about that sort of thing? I think keeping your options open, always being in contact. I would be very wary of writing off teams, like being like, I'm not interested at all. I think talk to them if you'd be remote, if you have no interest in the school or anything like that, okay, then maybe not. But I think if you'd have any remote interest, I think pursue it in some capacity. Um, and I think the whole stigma with D3, D2, and D1, I think is misguided. I think D3 has tons of quality and it can be very beneficial, but also for like a college experience, it is wonderful. I've seen that plenty of D3 players or even JUCO who are fantastic players that transfer into D1 and do better than some of the players that have been there. So I think don't knock yourself for going D3 or having an unconventional path. Um, I think focus a little bit less on the ID camps and that sense of being seen at those specific camps. I think building yourself up as a player, like if you're good enough, like if you're a great player, you will be seen, you will be sought after. So just building yourself up, becoming the best player you can. And that's what you can control, right? Like control that aspect of yourself that you are a fantastic player in some capacity and then kind of operate from there. I think focusing on you just playing is more important than because in the long run, like even with you, Eric, like you're saying it's unconventional, like no question. If I didn't know you, you would have played either pro or D1 or at a high level, based off what you play now, and that comes from your consistency, and ability to work in yourself and continue getting better. That I think a lot of players don't always have. I think they maybe get to college or play at a high level in high school, and they're like, all right, done. I've already committed. I can chill for the next year and a half. And like that's not the reality of it is all. What is your end goal? Do you want to play pro? Do you want to play at a higher level? Do you want to start in your team? Well, you need to be putting in work every single day now. And so like those results will come. I will say for VCU, I never went to a VCU ID camp. They saw me play a game and I was very fortunate, absolutely. And I think it's a lot of luck and I played well that game. Um, but I don't think ID camps are the end all be all. And I think just perfecting your craft as much as you can, I think is more important. And staying consistent it's much more important as a player than worrying about being seen and how good is my highlight song? How good is my highlights put together? How many cool tricks can I do? It's like, do you do, and it's super basic, but how well do you do the simple things? If a coach,
Spoken like a true defender.
absolutely, it's like when a coach needs you to make a tackle or win a header or make a play, it's like, will you can't basically, especially in college too, because the season goes by so quickly, you can lose your starting spot so quick, just being injured, whatever. But how consistent are you? Can the coach, with everything he has, say, I trust this guy? And that trust will translate to you playing. Um, absolutely. Because I
Yeah.
certainly not the best or most technical defender, especially as an outside back. But it's like, would I win most of my tackles? Would I do most of the things right? Would I do a good enough job? And I'm trying my hardest, of course. But at the highest level, like, can I do a good enough job in the coach's eyes where he can trust me that nothing crazy will happen unexpected from my role in that position.
Yeah. You mentioned luck. I've heard a lot of stories about like this coach came to see one of my games and I'm a center mid and I happened to score two crazy goals that game and like had the best game of my life. And then they didn't watch me play the next game and I played like butt. And it's like,
Yeah.
Nick said the same thing. I guess the VCU coach went to see him at Disney Showcase maybe, or somebody on his team got sent off. So they were playing a man down, and he was playing at like center back by
Yeah.
himself for forever. And he was like, "Oh, we lost, but I played so well because we were a man down, so I had to put in all these tackles and read the game and do all this other stuff."
Yeah.
And it's like the circumstances to that happens where somebody on your team gets sent off and like that happens to be the game that your coach watches and like
Yeah.
he's not watching to see if your team wins the game, he's watching to see if your team plays well. And as a defender, when somebody gets sent off, you're doing more work that game for sure. So like the luck, yeah, it's kind of crazy. I also think that people create their own luck in a certain sense. So like yeah, the guy got sent off, but Nick had done all the work up to that point to put himself in a position where he could perform like that when that happened. Because it doesn't matter if the guy gets sent off if you play like Bud afterwards, anyways. So, um, yeah, everyone's got their own path, that's for sure. I think we've got some players on our team that like didn't play in college or didn't do this or didn't do that, and then at the end of the day, we're all in the same field. So,
It doesn't really matter what your background is, just what you're doing on every day. And I think, as corny as it is, I do really like the quote of luck is really when opportunity meets skill. And I think that frames it in a better way where, other people looking out in on what you're going through and the opportunities you've gotten, they're like, he just got lucky. Or the coach just favors him for whatever reason, for some random reason. But I think like you're describing, Nick had put in all the work in, and then the right opportunity came along where now because he's been putting on this work, he's starting on this team that is playing in a good showcase. And he controlled everything he could up until that point. And then the luck is that the coach just happens to be there watching. Like
yeah,
that at the very end of it, right? At the very last moment, it's luck. But in reality, it's everything else that's built into it.
yeah.
You take advantage of. So
I think that's a good place to wrap up. Any last nickels before we get you out of here?
um no, just anyone watching or just in general, don't be afraid to ask for help from friends, from sports psychologists, from anything. I think developing that mental aspect to have the motivation to keep going is a very important one. And I think for a lot of people as well, I think the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. I've really liked that quote recently. I like that one a lot. As corny as it can be, but I think kind of having that reflection and facing what you might be most afraid of um is where you're going to see the most growth. Thing that accepting your fear and being brave in that space.
Yeah, love it. That's a great place to wrap it up. I think that's it. There's no outro. You don't have anything to plug, do you? You're not like writing a
Oh
book or something?
no. I'll give you my chess.com if someone wants to add me.
Okay.
Not good, but no. We're good. Nothing to
All
plug.
right. Thanks for listening, guys, as always, and we will see you guys next time.
Appreciate
Peace.
it.